Welcome everybody to a brand new video. This is midnight time and we have an exclusive interview with Paul Kubit, who is Associate Game Director at WoW, and Jade Martin,
Lead combat designer on World of Warcraft.
Okay, there you go. So we have some spicy questions, some great questions from our community as well, and we'll just get right into it, right?
Let's do it. Yeah, thanks for having us.
We presume we're leveling to level 90 in the new expansion. I don't think it was like directly confirmed.
That is correct. Yep, you'll be able to level up to 90 in midnight.
Okay, so this question is mostly related to hero talents because with the War Within, we got 10 new hero talents that took us from 70 to 80. So will we have 10 new hero talents going from 80 to 90, or will this be translated differently with the leveling experience?
Yeah, so we will be getting 10 new talent points as you level from 81 to 90. Those are going to be split up across the 3 different trees that we already have. So you'll get 3 points that go into your class tree, 3 that go into the hero talent tree, and then 4 that go into your spec tree. And you'll sort of earn them alternatingly. We're going to have a lot more details and visual details to share about this in our panel, which is happening on Saturday this week. Okay. So I'd encourage you to look towards that if you want to get the real deep dive into it. But the rough idea is in your class tree, you're going to have a little bit more breadth. You just have 3 more points that you could spend on whatever you want. So if there's something that you wanted to get in your class tree, but you just couldn't reach it, then that should unlock the ability for you to do that, or it may unlock you a complete overhaul and you can flow it differently. For your hero talents, we're unlocking an additional lane. So, there's already 3 lanes within the hero talent. There will also be a 4th lane in every single hero talent tree. So that'll just take those already iconic and impactful abilities and make them even more iconic, even more impactful. And then lastly, and I think most excitingly, is in the spec tree, where we're going to add 4 additional points into something we're calling the Apex talent. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about it. Yeah. So I don't think we've covered it much yet, but it is actually exciting. So we're calling it Apex talent. It is a unique multi-talent, multi-rank node. It has 4 points that you can put into it, but each point should feel really impactful, especially the first and the last node. So I know we revealed the Devourer Demon Hunter, and one of their signature abilities is Collapsing Star. While they're in Void Metamorphosis, they harvest void fragments, and the more they harvest, the more Collapsing Stars they can throw. Well, their first point of this Apex talent actually enables that Collapsing Star to always critically hit. And then the second and third increase your void damage and also your cosmic damage. And then the 4th node gives you a scaling on your crit damage, so you don't lose any value because your Collapsing Star always crits, right? We want crit to still be very valuable, and so these are like the kind of things that we can expect from them. Just very gameplay impacting changes to maybe a signature ability that you have for your spec. Actually, one other thing about that we didn't cover is you don't have to put your point into that. You'd be strongly encouraged to, but these are spec points, right? So we would expect you to put them into, but in case the question comes up, those 4 points can be spent elsewhere.
Beautiful. Okay, so keeping in topic on the hero talents, will we see a brand new hero talent for the Demon Hunter? Like in the 3, can you share anything about it? Or
we are absolutely going to see a new hero talent. The name is still pending. The leading contender, which I think is okay to share, is Annihilator at the moment. It is a very cool hero talent, in my opinion. It focuses on calling down void comets into battle as you generate series.
Cool,
yeah, so it is really cool. It plays really well from range, but it also plays well from melee because another spec is obviously going to need to be able to spec into it, which will be Vengeance. So Vengeance is going to have the Annihilator hero tree as well, and then
Will be Fell Meteors.
which will be Fell Meteors, yeah.
And it won't have Fellscarred anymore, right?
And they will not have Fellscarred anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, so Fellscarred will be shared with Devourer and Havoc. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Kind of like a follow-up question with the range combat that we obviously don't know much about at the moment. Obviously, Devourer has been kind of publicized to be a mid-range class. Now, does this mean something similar to Survival, where most of the abilities are ranged, or more akin to the Evoker that has like a shorter range for combat?
So it is technically a mid-range class spec rather, which is kind of equivalent to the Evoker. But one of the cool things about Devourer is it actually has 2 playstyles that the talents are going to cater towards, which is just kind of playing from mid-range as a caster, just living out that Void Metamorphosis, hurling Collapsing Stars. But then there's also kind of the, what I would call maybe like the hybrid, which is dashing in and out of melee combat. The frequency isn't going to be so much that it feels overburdening, but rather enough that it's exciting, a change to the gameplay style. One kind of focuses on staying in Void Metamorphosis for a little bit longer, which might be really great for like a raid single target fight where you have a lot of uptime on a boss to maximize your Void meta.
Yeah.
And then the hybrid, the dashing in and out with Vengeful Retreat, is kind of better maybe for a Mythic Plus where maybe you can't stay in Void Metamorphosis for as long, and you're more concerned about you're not as concerned about dealing damage, all of your damage in kind of Void Metamorphosis.
I just want to take a moment here to appreciate Jade's excitement when talking about this new spec for the Demon Hunter. It shows, it oozes, man.
I'm glad to hear it. I am really proud of the spec. The combat teams put a lot of work into it, and I think it's going to show really well once you get your hands on it.
Yeah, I bet we can talk like for hours about this because there's so many questions that we still have to get to. I do want to mention one thing in the gameplay reveal that we've seen. The Void Demon Hunter, the Devourer that we saw was a Void Elf. Is there a plan to add Demon Hunter to Nightborne as well, or is it strictly just with Void Elves for now? I mean, it hasn't been confirmed, but
Yeah, so we are adding Demon Hunter to Void Elves in Midnight. This is because it makes sense for the story. Like there is like a really good reason for the Void Elves to want to be able to become Demon Hunters. They will be unlocked as part of pre-patch after a short quest. That anyway, it's very short quest line that folks can do. That will unlock Void Demon Hunters as a class race combination for for your entire account, for your warbands. We are aware that that is an alliance race, and that does involve an imbalance or introduce an imbalance for the Horde. All I can say there is that this was a really good story fit for us. The World Soul Saga is not over yet. There will be other cool story fits later for other cool race class combinations that may bring things back into the balance in the future. But we'll learn more about that as we get to it.
for what it's worth, I think this adds a little bit more flavor and personality to the game when things make a little bit more sense and you add them through a story quest line. And we see Addons there trying to learn this whole thing, and the Void of trying to learn the Demon Hunter. So I, as a Horde player, sure, but I can respect the stick to the fantasy and to the whole making sense take.
Yeah, I mean, to become a Demon Hunter, you have to be in a pretty rough place to want to become a Demon Hunter, right? To sacrifice everything for your hunts. And the Void Elves are a little closer to that right now than the Nightborne are.
Nightborne, yeah.
What do you guys believe is the most exciting feature about the new spec for Demon Hunters?
That's a great question. For me, I kind of like how it is ranged, but as he was saying, particularly in that second build style that he has, that you maintain that mobility. I'm gonna love seeing these like purple, flinging Demon Hunters just bouncing around the battlefield like Demon Hunters already do, but also jumping back. They've got this really cool ability called Void Ray, which is their version of I-Beam, which is a 25-yard beam that goes forward. It has all that iconic movement and like flexibility that I-Beam does, where you can rotate it, you can line all your enemies up and just turn them all into ash in one particular ability. It's going to look great. I also think that the art team really killed it, as they always do, but they killed it on this one, where when you switch into to Devourer spec, you're not going to see any green in any of your abilities. There's going to be void, 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 because that is the cosmic power that you are embodying in that case. And then when you switch back to Havoc or Destruction, then yeah, you're going to be fell as hell.
Thanks for stealing my answer. I thought one of the coolest things that we did that we maybe didn't necessarily explain was that you're not actually going to be using any Fel magic at all. You'll be using Void. I do think that's really cool. That was a huge undertaking, both from effects and also, the combat designer working on this. So that is exciting. I do think, for me, Void Metamorphosis is probably the coolest aspect of this. I love the tension of how long can I fight against the Void to stay in this, to deal the maximum amount of damage? How many collapsing stars can I get off in my Void Metamorphosis? I'm a big Breath of Sindragosa fan, and so I feel like there's a correlation there in some capacity. But I think the way Void Devourer handles their Void Metamorphosis is really cool. I think it's going to be very enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. Can respect that. I'm a fan of Breath of Sindragosa as well, and I know some people might not like it as much, but there's always been a fun place.
Felt the similarities when it was there. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of adjacent to this, but more of a broad question. I think this will mark the 40th spec in the game, if I'm not mistaken, with the Devourer spec. We're getting to some really big numbers when it comes to how many specs Val has. I mean, it's a testament to how old the game is. The question is about are we more likely to see classes get an additional spec in the future, or will we still have a chance to see like totally new classes with like new playstyles and so on?
I think that's a great question. And one we talk about a lot actually. Obviously we have nothing to share right now. We're still deciding. 40 is a lot of specs. There's certainly merit to adding an additional spec, and I certainly think it would be cool, but doing that for each class, we're only adding additional specs, but and I don't think we ever want to shy away from new classes, but we want to make sure that the moment is right for introducing a new class. It really has to make sense for the expansion and what story we want to tell.
Okay, I will keep into the sort of like the class design space here. So from the looks of it, without knowing too much detail, apart from what you guys just shared, this new DH spec feels like the most modern design spec for modern WoW. Is this philosophy on modern design specs being considered to like other specs as we go further down the line into Midnight? Because I'm thinking about Fury Wars. There's a couple of specs that are a little bit behind design wise, and I'm curious, like, how do you guys see this? Can you apply the same philosophy there?
I think that's a great question. I think anytime we approach creating a new spec or a new class, we saw with Evoker did a lot of new things that a bunch of our classes previously hadn't done, right? So we see a lot of different philosophies that try and formulate around what WoW is, but also maybe push the boundaries a little bit. And I think we see that in Devourer as well. And as we move forward into Midnight and beyond, I think we're looking at all of our classes and seeing what we can do to kind of make them, more approachable. Something that feels like you're kind of picking up one of these new specs that feels like it's modern in a way that fits the rest of WoW. And so that's definitely something we're always considering and want to make sure that we're able to do, because we realize not everyone's going to play Devourer. I hope you do, because it is really awesome. But, there are a lot of people who play, Fury Warrior. There are a lot of players who play Death Knight. And we want to make sure their experience feels as good as a Devourer Demon Hunter.
To take it a little bit to a different topic, for the first... No, actually, we might have had this before, but we do have 3 new raids going into the new expansion. And when it comes to the raids, I'm sure everybody has their own questions. Something that we were curious about was about the difficulty tuning of those raids. Since I think the Dream Rift has only one boss, would the difficulty of that boss put it the same as the difficulty of the last boss of Void
Spire.
Void Spire, yes. I'm sorry. Or where do you guys see that balance in terms of difficulty, and potentially the loot distribution probably would be proportional to that difficulty?
Yeah, so great question. It's important to note that all 3 raids are going to be part of the same tier. So there's not a separate tier, like there may be, in particular in the case of March on Cold and Us, that one is unlocked a couple weeks after Void Spire is unlocked, and so there will be a difficulty increase there. You should expect some level of difficulty increase going from Void Spire into March on Cold and Us. Those 2 are linked. They are both part of our campaign, and so they are linked with story, and you should feel a progression there. As far as the one boss raid, I won't expect that to be. I don't know exactly where it is in the middle, but somewhere in the middle of Void Spire, where it won't be the easiest boss of the entire season. It won't be the hardest one, or any harder than what you see in Void Spire, but somewhere in the middle. The idea is, like, one of the great things that a one boss raid gives you is flexibility. And so we want to make sure that we're not gating that flexibility behind a really hard difficulty challenge. You could only have that flexibility to do maybe a one boss raid, a quick, half hour long jaunt with your guild. Only after you've reached this height, whether you've gotten to the point where you can defeat it. That should be somewhere in the middle of the tier.
Obviously, as far as we've known, whenever you guys make like a new system, like kind of like how Elves were, Hero Talents were, you're monitoring the reception and all of that, so it's all fair. Do you see this being something that you will apply every patch for Midnight or from now on, or is this something that you're testing out to see how it plays out first and then probably draw some of the bridges there?
We always look to the forums, look to the players, look to see what people are saying. So yeah, that will be the case for sure. We'll see, hey, what is the reception? Do players like this? Are there any unforeseen pain points with multiple raids that we didn't see? Or is it something which is far and away the greatest? I'll say there's also something really cool about a big monolithic raid where every single boss in a season is building towards one ultimate goal. Yeah. And so I would never close the door on that. I think that's something very cool that we should probably anticipate in the future. But it's nice to have a couple of different tools in the toolkit to be able to, to tell the story.
Awesome. Now, I just want to touch a little bit on the prey feature. We've noticed in the presentation that there's like 3 tiers of difficulty here. And we were kind of curious, like, how would you like associate the difficulties to what we are currently being accustomed to in the game? Like, I don't know, Delves tier 10, something like that. Like, how can you excel? Like, is it normal, hard, and
Normal, hard, and nightmare. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So normal mode is a mode that we all start in. Normal mode is how you first interact with prey. And then the bosses that you're fighting and that shouldn't be all that much more difficult than what you normally see in the outdoor world. It's just a different feel for outdoor content. But for someone who is used to the difficulty of outdoor content and enjoys that level of challenge, it will be at that challenge level. Now, it should still feel different. You should still be on your toes a little bit because you are going to be hunting someone who you might get the jump on them, but they might also get the jump on you. You might just be minding your own business when they begin to enter the combat. But it won't be significantly harder. With hard and torment, without specific details, I think this is something that the team is still like feeling out and play testing, and we'll get a chance to play test it with y'all soon once we get into alpha and beta. But I would expect that top tier of Nightmare to be closer to some of the more difficult Delves. And there will be rewards that go alongside with that as well. So Prey is going to give you some really cool cosmetics, some cool mounts, some cool transmog appearances that have a little edgy black blood elf look. But there will also be some power rewards that come from it. And those power rewards will be in the mix with the rewards you get from Delves.
Okay. So there was also going to be power rewards. I understood you correctly. In the most difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
Something a little bit more broad as well. Obviously, this question comes from a potential subjective bias, so feel free to to correct us. We play the game with almost all roles, tanks, healers, and DPS whenever we do dungeons and raids. And it seemed like the War Within has either made tanks and healers a little bit more scarce, or maybe people are a little bit more hesitant to adapt into the role. And we all know that the game is trying to be a little bit more accessible to new players. The improvements to the UI, this definitely are a testament to that. All of the amazing changes you guys did with the animations of abilities and stuff. Is there something that you guys have in plan? Maybe you can share, maybe not, about tanking and healing as roles going into the future to maybe make them less scary for people, so we can probably get away with all of this waiting in queue for.
We need more tanks and healers, guys.
Yes. I have a related topic I'll cover, and then I'll let you jump in on tanks and healers specifically. Yeah. So a big part of this is we see challenges that folks have in queuing. In particular, finding groups has been a challenge. And this affects tanks and healers for sure. Groups who are looking for tanks and healers, but it also affects just everyone who's trying to find the right group for them. One of the things that we're focusing on in Midnight is making the queuing experience a little bit more easy to find the group that you're looking for. And so we're taking some efforts. I think we'll learn a little bit more about this in the future as we share more information about it. Cool. But to allow someone who is posting a group to share what my group's intent is. Am I looking to for just the most efficient players, because we were only going to expect the most efficient players to clear this difficult content? Or am I someone who is a little bit more chill? I'm here for fun. I just want to clear. I don't necessarily want to time it. And then give players who are looking for a group the ability to filter by that and say, like, I am looking for a chill group. I'm not looking for this exclusivity, or I am looking for an exclusive group because I expect the same level of performance. But giving players a little bit better tools to find the better groups will make it easier for everyone, including healers and tanks.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, when we look at this from the combat and the class side of things, we realize that playing a tank and a healer it's a large ask, right? Like, we look at a tank and, it's not just knowing what your rotation it is, right? You go into a Mythic Plus, you're expected to know all the mechanics, all of the dangerous casts, the routes, the timings, just everything, right? You're kind of the leader of the party. It's that's the expectation. You're not, your DPS runs out in front and dies, that's like, they're not going to be able to lead the pack in the same way that a tank can. And so when we think about this is something that's on our mind. I can say for Midnight, we do have some plans. We haven't really announced anything, but we're looking at how we can make healers and tanks a little bit more approachable. There's still going to be some of those things that are just kind of how WoW works when we talk about Mythic Plus, about knowing routes and things like that. But there are ways when we look at encounter design, how we can maybe make that a little bit more forgiving, or dungeon design, right? But it's kind of, it's a shared problem that we're constantly talking into encounters about, and how we can make people want to play war, or tanks rather. And we do want it, it also has to be fun too, right? Like, that's the hard part, right? And there's a nice balance when we're looking at it. You want to be able to deal damage. You want to be able to live forever, right? But you also have to be able to die at some point, or you'll never die in raid, right? So it's a really difficult balancing act that we're trying to find the right thing. But there are things that we look at that you're asked to do in a dungeon as a tank that we as the class team are kind of asking you to do, and it might just be a little bit too much. I think we can be a little bit more forgiving, and the same goes for healers, right? I think they kind of focus on the same problems. I know that healing is so fast paced, the damage intake is incredible, and you just feel like it's either I'm topping you off or you're dead, right? Like there's a one shot, and that's kind of an ever scaling problem when we look at Mythic Plus. Eventually, you're going to get to a wall where people just die. But we can make that experience better. We can smooth that out. And those are all things that we want to look at, both from a tank and a healer perspective. And we think that'll make the full experience of Mythic Plus better. And this goes to Raid 2 to a lesser extent, obviously.
You've just answered 3 more of our questions, so this is fantastic.
Okay, great.
And I wanted to say one thing that I think your idea is probably incredible. We've seen a lot of friction with people going into groups and probably some discrimination towards certain classes, certain roles. And I think a lot of that is probably due to a lack of communication. That maybe it's in part a problem of the UI, or maybe there's some inherent implication that people don't understand with a score and stuff. And if that can be clarified more, I'm sure that a lot of that friction can go away and hopefully alleviate some of these issues.
Yeah, the key here is giving players the tools to communicate better, to communicate intent, because it's not always easy to see just from a posted group what the intent of that group is. And so being able to say, hey, I'm just learning. Like if you wanted to post a group that you're learning, you literally have to type that in and then have, rely on people reading the text in your titles or descriptions to be able to understand that. Giving players a little bit better way to communicate that and then filter by that information should help resolve a lot of the conflict that we see.
I was going to circle back a little bit on what you guys discussed about, the grouping stuff and the combat design for Mythic Plus, but also for raids. When you guys took on the challenge of making improvements to the UI and adding your own version of weak auras, cooldown manager, and all of that, there's still specs, and I can tell you for a fact, Outlaw Rogue cannot be played without a weak aura right now. My question is, in a world where add-ons will be gone forever and everything is relying on the Blizz UI and the WoW UI, will this also affect combat mechanics, class mechanics?
Yeah.
I don't know, design mechanics like for the environment and stuff, because obviously I'm sure you guys know, the game has been accustomed to this playstyle for so long. How is this going to happen? Because we already know things are starting to move in that direction, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a great question. In terms of weak auras and things like that, I don't really have any comments on that at the moment. But in terms of the necessity to play Outlaw Rogue, or the necessity of weak auras to play Outlaw Rogue, when we look at that from the combat design standpoint, that's a problem. If a player feels like the only way to play their class is to go to a third-party site, download some weak auras, hop into WoW, and then you can start playing, there's probably something wrong. We're probably not giving you the best experience we can from the combat design standpoint. So what I can tell you there is, when we look at a class like Outlaw, we look at a class like Unholy DK with managing festering wounds and things like that. Those are the types of things that we're looking at and looking to see, do these need to exist? Does this improve gameplay in any capacity? Can we offer you a better experience by redesigning it? Yes, those are always things we want to do. We obviously do reworks and within an expansion, but sometimes there's a limit to what we feel comfortable doing within an expansion, and we're always within a patch of an expansion.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of expansion boundary level changes that we're willing to look at and make changes for.
Kind of tied to the cinematic that we've seen, it's very hard as a Paladin enjoyer not to get excited about what we've seen in the cinematic. We haven't seen Paladin in the cinematic, I think, since the Burning Crusade. And it's I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I'm hoping that we can get some spicy details. Is there anything in the works for Paladins in the future? I don't know if it's another spec or a rework or some updates to animations. If you have anything that can get Paladins players a little bit excited about
Citing that because he saw the Paladins in the cinematic. There's no denying Paladins were there. So,
Huh.
You got any juice on Paladins?
I mean, I will say we're much like Outlaw Rogue, right? Much like Unholy DK with festering wounds. We're always looking at what we can do to improve the experiences. I think we'll probably see some updates to some capacity for each of the 3 specs, right? I don't think they'll be, not to spoil too much, I don't think they're gonna, Red isn't going to be a ranged caster like Devourer is, right? But I think we'll see some improvements there as far as the other things.
Yeah, I'm clearly all 3 specs will get new Apex talents. So you'll see everybody's going to have new toys, and that includes Paladins. From a lore perspective, Paladins, even if they don't have a redesign to their class, they're going to have a lot of relevance in this expansion because, yes, it's midnight. We're fighting the Void.
Yep.
But as you've seen from a lot of like the trailer we saw with a lot of just the iconography with some of the mounts and pets which come with pre-order and so on, that light versus void is as much a theme in this expansion as void is. And so we're going to spend a lot of time looking at the light, looking at what it means to be a paladin. We have characters like Turalian, characters like his son Eritor, who are both paladins, and really interrogate that, what it means to wield the light. And also, we also know from like things like the Naru, that the void and the light are two sides of the same coin. If you push a Naru too far, then it can snap into void. A being of pure holy light energy can snap right into void. This is true of the light as a cosmic force itself. And so we're going to see some examples of like, the void is generally bad and the light is generally good. But there's cases where the light might not be great, and vice versa. There might be cases where the void isn't so bad as well. I'm a Shadow Priest main, so I think the void is pretty cool personally.
Is it, right? I mean, we've seen what the Rail did on Draenor, so we can kind of see the both sides of
exactly.
There's no chance of void paladins anytime soon, right? I just threw it there.
We never like to close doors on anything, but we have nothing to announce about void paladins at this point.
Guilty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys, for this.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
guys, make sure to watch the panel tomorrow. It's going to be with a lot more details. So I think it's with Ian, right? And Paul. Okay, yeah. This is. Make sure you watch it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. It was great.